Guys, welcome to the Live the Movie Crew. I'm Josh here with Eric and Mallory. How are you guys doing tonight?
Hey, Josh.
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So if you haven't seen us before, we are the Live the Movie Crew, and what we do here is we essentially, if you guys know how basically like any movie goes, um, essentially what happens is that there's usually a hero, and usually the main character in the story has to go through some sort of process achieve what he or she wants. And the hero usually thinks that it's something other than what it really is. And so hero goes through all these types of challenges and stuff like that, and starts thinking, "Oh my gosh, there's no way I can work my way out to this goal. Whether it's to save the world or something like that, or to fall in love with a certain person. Um, there's no way. He hates me. I'm not powerful enough, not strong enough, all that sort of stuff." But what the hero eventually realizes is that's not really the case, and there's something else that they need to work on in order to become their best selves. And so normally it's just a matter of them figuring out their true capability and figuring out what kind of improvements they need to make, and that's kind of the model that we've used for our group, is for that kind of movie to be as a representation of our lives. So a couple of things we do. Every couple of months or so, we get together for a mastermind conference. And it's just a gathering for a weekend, just to kind of absorb a lot of these kinds of lessons from personal development and, personal growth books and stuff like that. And then we also get to go out for, a short bit just to enjoy the culture and, just have a good time with each other, build relationships and all. And the other thing we do in the group is we actually have these weekly calls, and in doing so, we usually discuss a book that reflects, some sort of personal growth or, leadership aspect and stuff like that. And every month we pick a different book, so we can all have different kind of ideas bouncing around in our heads. And this week, the book that we picked, or this month, I should say, the book that we picked out is called Success: Why You Fail Where Others Succeed. And it's by a guy named Thibault Maurice, who is actually French. He actually was born in France and writes in English, and now he lives in Japan. He's lived in there for the last 7 years, so he's pretty well traveled. And the book, from what I've read so far, I've only gotten through about 10 pages or so. But the book is mainly about essentially about just like changing your perspective and changing your perception of what basically your idea of reality, and helping to basically just helping to remember that the world, trying to be optimistic and trying to be just just trying to remember the good things in life, because the more you focus on those, the better your perception of life is going to be, and the more likely good things are going to happen to you. So, again, I've only gotten through about the first 9 or 10 pages, but there are a couple quotes that I'll go through that I thought were pretty substantial, and then I'll let you guys kind of go on and discuss that a little bit too, and then whatever else comes around comes around. So, so the first thing I have here is on page 2. He actually says, "Our mind needs failure. No great inventions would have ever come into existence without failure." It's really funny, because this, even I think among people who are used to this kind of stuff and all that sort of stuff, we get so focused on success that, at least for me anyways, it gets pretty easy to kind of say, well, this person succeeded, but they didn't have such and such challenge. Like, they didn't, their car didn't die on such and such a day, or, like, they don't have 3 kids to handle all on their own, all that sort of stuff. But in truth, like, most of the time, even when people go through challenges like that, there are still people who go through those kinds of things and end up reaching their goals. So So it just really struck me again, just as as I'm reading through it again, that it's just something that we can't really have success without learning how to fail in the first place. Mainly just because if we didn't understand failure, we wouldn't really understand success either. So let's see, what else does he talk about? Our current reality is not the result of our past experience. It is the result of our personal interpretation of past experiences, in addition to specific parts of reality that we choose to focus our attention on. And he says you can only grasp a tiny part of reality, and that's the part you choose to focus your attention on. So whenever whenever you start, I always feel like I always feel like I kind of go through like kind of waves of like being really excited about something, and then and then something happens, and then I all of a sudden start getting a little bit more upset or whatever, and so it seems like I get stuck in that kind of situation for a little bit, and then I come out of it, and then I'm all hunky dory and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes I don't know. I don't know if that seems like normal to most people, but that's how I feel, anyways. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I think those are. I'm getting feedback from me. There we go. All right. I think those are two really good quotes. I think that not only is any great invention come out of failures, but also when you try to, if you have a success in creating something or learning something or doing something, and you didn't have any challenges, you wouldn't be able to relate to other people and being able to teach them how to do it or how it works, because if it just worked for you the first time, then how could you teach anybody else what happens when they need to figure something out? So, if you came up with this idea and then someone else followed you and they said, well, what happens if this goes wrong? Well, it never went wrong. So how, so you wouldn't even know what to do. So that's interesting. And the second quote, when you talk about, your perception of reality, I think that you can make an argument depending on what you focus on for pretty much anything. And because of that, people say, oh, you should focus on what's real or what's true. It's like, yeah, but there's still even a perception of that, because, you can make the argument that the world is a terrible place. You could say, well, there's, terrorist attacks, and North Korea's got like a nuclear bomb, and, Trump's saying all kinds of crazy stuff. And, there's, countries going bankrupt and all this stuff. So you could just focus on that. Or you could say, we are living in the greatest time in history. Almost the entire planet is connected, and within the next 5 years, all of Africa will be connected to the same internet and all that stuff that we have. And there are people working on flying cars, helping us live longer, helping us live forever, diagnosing our own challenges, figuring out how to help, animals that are going extinct. There's people working on technology for, every area of life. There's, Bill Gates and all them trying to rid disease around the world, specifically in Africa and everywhere else. There's, all these billionaires that are donating 50% or more of their net worth to charities to help do the things that governments aren't doing to help us change the world. So which one is true? Like, which one is true? They're both true. So if they're both true, then it's just your determination of whether you're focused on more of the kind of optimistic side or the pessimist side. But either side you're on, both are real. So it's okay to be aware of the stories, even if you're a positive person, aware of the stories of what's going on in the world. But it's less about what do you know about, and more about where do you put your emotion behind the attention. Do you spend your time watching every news cycle and get the emotion behind all the negative things that are happening, so you get paralyzed and you can't even move because you're so afraid to even go outside? Or like me, do I go on a couple news stations and just read quick articles and just know what's going on and I think I get an email from one of them just saying like the top 5 stories of the day. But I don't watch any videos. I don't watch the news. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm just aware of that stuff. Also specifically because it's, you know, a lot of the finances, that type of stuff is short term, is dictated by the stories that are going on. But other than that, I spend the rest of my time reading the books like we're reading, listening to audio tapes, reading articles by people that we've learned from, like Peter Diamandis and Tony Robbins and Dr. Dyer. And so I am aware of those things that are going on that can be challenges. And I don't pretend that they're not there, but I spend most of my emotional time in the things that actually are positive and moving forward, so that you have the energy and emotion to actually want to do what it is in your day. Because if you only believed all the bad things that are happening, why would you even do anything? Why would you even show up to work if we're just going to get blown up and, you know, at some point in the near future? So that's kind of my point on the whole perspective, that both of those things are true, but what percentage of your time do you spend focused on one versus the other, or somewhere in the middle?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mel.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Eric. Like how if you spend too much time focusing on the world around you, it really can be a paralyzing feeling, and how it almost causes you to stop taking risks of your own to really create the life that you see yourself living or that you desire to live, because it can create a lot of fear if you really focus on the negative aspects of what's going on in the world, because there is a lot of suffering in the world, all over the place. And but as far as personal development, the book mentions when some people say, let's be realistic. It's such an open, being realistic is so open-ended in my eyes, and in the author's eyes too, because everyone's reality is so different. We all have a different perspective on what the world is around us says to us. We perceive things differently. So being realistic, it's different with everybody. So you can't tell someone, okay, be realistic, do this. Well, that might not be the case for them, because that's just not what they perceive as what's right for their life. So I wrote down playing it safe versus taking a risk and going for a big goal that you don't know if you'll hit or not, because as humans, and Eric talks about this all the time as he refers to the 6 human needs of Tony Robbins, we all like to have this sense of certainty and a little bit of control over what's going to happen in our future. But if we always live every day like that, thinking that you have to play it safe and do what you know, and stay in the life that you're currently living because you know it and it's familiar to you, then you end up, again, paralyzing yourself in that life, when maybe you do, dream of bigger things for yourself, or you want to hit this really major goal that's just always been on your mind, but you don't know how, so you don't go after it. No one knew how to, Thomas Edison didn't know how to make a light turn on before something didn't work 10,000 times. He says he didn't fail. He didn't fail. He just found out 10,000 reasons or ways that it didn't work, and then found the one way that it did. So I think people going into something and doing something new puts us outside of our comfort zone in a lot of ways, because anytime you do anything new is going to be uncomfortable. But that's what growth is, and that's where you can start taking new steps into the life that you see yourself living, and while also being grateful for the life that you currently have. So I think it's so important to keep that in mind. If you do watch the news, the author right away says don't watch any TV at all. And at first I was like, any TV, like even for entertainment, like a movie now and then? But as I read further, I understand where he was coming from. But I think, going back to, the being realistic thing that I started with, I think it doesn't really have any, there's no definitive answer of what realistic is for every single person combined, because our perceptions are so different for each and every one of us.
Yeah, so I totally agree, Mallory, because I think I think a lot of people will say, I think a lot of people will tell you that, um, that obviously Maurice says this in his book that they're only basing their standards of realistic on what they think people can achieve, and not necessarily based on what the actual people can achieve. And so, yeah, so I think I was going to say something earlier, but I totally forgot what it was. So I'm going to go on unless you guys have something to put in. Um, I was going to talk about TV a little bit too, because oh, actually, yeah, I was going to talk about the mistake part too. So I'll get to both of these. So I think a lot of times too, it's TV is so subtle in terms of how like it shapes us and molds us and stuff like that. Um, because it's easy for us to kind of sit and well, I think actually a lot of times we as a society actually kind of view television and entertainment and stuff like that um, just as something passive to do. And I think oftentimes we don't actually even think about the things that we're watching or listening to. And so whenever we don't do that, it's easy for us to get kind of caught up in what they tell us, and not necessarily look at it at all critically. So I think it's definitely important too. And what else was I gonna say? Uh, yeah, I think a lot of times too when in terms of making mistakes and failing and trying 10,000 ways that don't work. I've noticed that to be true when I'm at work as well, because I work overnight at a hotel, and a lot of my job is to make sure all the payments balance and all the records are set properly and all that sort of stuff. And so when I started working, the person who had been there for about 8 years, and so I think he kind of cleaned up all the things that I missed whenever I was there. And so when he left, um, I was kind of left to learn all that sort of stuff, basically by trial and error. Um, like there were times when the credit card, uh, uh, basically what happens every night when I run the hotel process is I have to make sure all the credit cards that are credit card like the payments that are posted are all processed on people's credit cards. And so sometimes a payment could have been posted um, that wouldn't process, that wouldn't go through, and so I'd have to figure out the balance of that and either get it to go through or take it off and not put it back on their card and all that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit of a kind of convoluted process. It's hard for me to explain if you've never understood that before, but I've had to learn all those types of things and how to make sure it's right just through trial and error and just kind of figuring things out. All right, so one other thing that he had, next thing I wanted to talk about was basically he says being optimistic or being pessimistic is a choice. And I think a lot of times people kind of base their I think they base their reasoning on whether to be optimistic or pessimistic based on things that are going on around them. Again, that whole idea with the focus on, say, you see something on the news, it's like a terrorist attack, or you see, you see, somebody donating to a bunch of charities, and you say, oh my gosh, the world's wonderful. Look at all these people who are donating. And so, whatever you choose to focus on, again, is essentially kind of the attitude that you portray. So let me see what else I have in here. Oh, he also says pessimism is a very little use. I thought that was kind of interesting too. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I was going to say one thing. I know that Tony has said this, but other people have too. Is that they've done studies that that pessimists are more accurate than optimists, meaning like they see things specifically how they are, but they're not as successful because they don't optimists see things how they are, but then also how they could be or how they could be better. And because a pessimist is so accurate, they don't give that extra effort to get there. Like when all of us were still working at Cutco and we were managers or sales reps and we were doing all the right things, but weren't quite getting the results yet, a pessimist would stop giving that effort that's supposed to get you the results, because they would just look at it and be like, I've spent this much time, I've done this much stuff, and it's supposed to get this result, and it hasn't, so I'm wasting my time, so I'll stop. An optimist will say, I'm doing all the right things. I was told that if I keep doing this for this period of time, I'm going to get this result. And because they keep going, they get some semblance of that result. So it's just interesting that a pessimist is actually more accurate with how things are going, but they don't continue to give effort because of that. The other thing is that, it's cool to be optimistic. And I've read the book, like, what is it? The Power of Positive Thinking and all that stuff. I think that's great, but I think what's important is to be real. So, to see things how they are. But the problem is people either just see things how they want them to be and don't pay attention to how they are, or if someone's on the negative side, they see things how they are, but then they have a story about how things are. You know what I mean? It's not like, hey, I'm 30 pounds overweight, but then there's a whole story about it, right? It's like, you're just 30 pounds overweight. No, that's what it is. Or you're in some debt, but then there's a story about it. And when you start riding through the story, then you have all the reasons why you can't do it, instead of saying, okay, this is the situation as it is. What am I going to do about it? And actually take action. So I think it's not deluding yourself that everything's awesome all the time or that everything's terrible, but just seeing things how they are. And once you're honest with yourself without the story, but then seeing it how you want it to be, and then figuring out a plan on how to get there.
Yeah, that makes sense, definitely. What was I gonna say? Now I'm totally lost. I got a little lost in what you were saying, and okay, yeah. So here's what I was gonna say.
Well, I mean, I can jump in and share a little bit about.
So I think I may have told the story. Go ahead, Mel.
I like what Eric said about, when you're pessimistic, you basically are more accurate, because you're just stating what the facts are now, like what he said about, I'm 30 pounds overweight or something. But I think the benefit of being optimistic is, it's important to see the reality and not just being like, oh, my life's great, I don't care if I'm enjoying my cake if you are 30 pounds overweight. But it's important to see the reality almost in the pessimistic view, but then in an optimistic way, to think about, okay, what changes do I want to make for myself? Because that's the most important thing to do, is make changes for yourself first, and then you'll be able to help influence others with your story. You went from A to B because of C, because of the action that you took, because you were optimistic and you made a decision to be optimistic instead of being on the pessimistic side. So I thought that was kind of cool, that he shares a little bit about in the book, about it is a choice to be pessimistic or optimistic, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think my screen's freezing up a little bit. That's fine. I'm gonna get a little lost here, but that's okay. But yeah, actually, it's a good segue into what I was gonna say, because I think my uncle told the story. I may have told you guys this once or twice before, but I don't know. Or I guess it's not really a story, but basically, you have two choices, or I shouldn't say you have two choices, but you're either healthy or you're not healthy. And so if you're healthy, you've got nothing to worry about. If you're not healthy, you only got two things to worry about. And so that means, so if you're not healthy, you just have to worry about whether you get better or you don't get better. And so if you get better, you got nothing to worry about. If you die, you only have to worry about two things: whether you go to heaven or you go to hell. And if you go to heaven, you got nothing to worry about. And if you go to hell, you'll be shaking hands with too many old friends to worry about anything. So can you guys hear me? I think my screen's still freezing up a little bit. I'm good? Okay, cool. Awesome. So yeah, so yeah, let me go back into the book again. Pessimism is very little use. What else did we mentioned TV a lot. Jim Rohn once wisely observed, poor people have a big TV, rich people have a big library. So that's always good. I think we covered the whole idea that you're not responsible for changing the world, you're only responsible for yourself. And that is pretty much as far as I got through. So yeah, I don't think I have much else to talk about from this point, unless you guys have anything else to say.
Well, I think I would like to expand on the point that he makes about positive affirmations and visualizations daily. And I think so many times, like, anybody can read a personal development book, and based on what a lot of the personal development books claim is that, okay, this book can change your life for the better. This book can, help you set a goal and achieve the goal. But it all always comes down to taking action and actually committing to the personal development and making a decision to, take the steps that they recommend, because so many of these books recommend the same steps, like the positive mindset. Positive affirmations is a really common theme in a lot of these things. And, I think the author quotes Zig Ziglar where he says, personal development is like personal hygiene. It's recommended daily in order for it to, actually make a difference, which is kind of funny, because you can get motivated by anything for 5 minutes. But if that motivation in those 5 minutes doesn't propel you into taking action and getting remotivated on a more consistent basis, then it's not going to make any difference in the long term. So it's so important to, not just read about it, because we can all just read a book. Everyone's pretty much capable of that. But it's important to actually take the tools that the book gives you and implement a couple. And not every single thing that we read as like a do this action step will be effective for us, because we're all different. We all learn differently. We all grow differently at different rates. And some things resonate with some of us, but not others. So that's why I love being able to read so many different books with so many different perspectives, because we get to see, something will click in one book that is just written from a different perspective by the author. And we might take action on that, that advice more so than if we did from another author, because we relate to it more. So I think, going back to the positive affirmations, there's so many different ways you can do positive affirmations. You can write them down in a journal. You can speak them out loud to yourself in the mirror. You can shout them as loud as you can, with feeling behind it, with a story behind it. The book says that it's important to say things like, I'm confident, instead of I'm not shy. And if you don't quite believe that you're confident when you say it out loud, start questioning that. Question yourself, because then you can get rid of that subconscious belief that you're not confident. Like, why would I not be confident if I did this, this, and this? And start questioning those actions that you've taken in the past to prove to yourself that you are confident, or whatever the case is, whatever affirmation that you want, to adopt into your lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely. Eric, you can go ahead, because I'm blanking out again on what I was going to say.
Breaking your own pattern.
I know, right?
One of the things I was going to say is, it's so funny, the criticisms of personal development are kind of don't make any sense, and I'll kind of explain it to you. So if you think about someone who reads like one personal development book, like Mal was talking about, or they go to one conference and they said, well, I was told that this book or this conference could change my life. It's like, well, because like Mal was just talking about affirmations. Well, you are the way that you are because of what you've been saying to yourself, not one time, but pretty much every day since you've been growing up. And the studies show that we have 95% of the same thoughts that we had yesterday. Like not many of them really change. So we're basically saying the same things to ourselves. And what I think is hilarious, right, is if you were to tell someone who knows nothing about personal development, right, if you were to tell them that you went to a conference and you were doing incantations, which an incantation is what Mally was talking about, which is an affirmation. But when you say the affirmation, you don't just say it as a statement like I am happy or whatever the statement is. You literally do it as almost an exercise. You say it with all the emotion behind you, and you say it to yourself over and over and over. Now, someone who's a pessimist or not into personal development, like, that sounds like some voodoo crap or whatever. Like, I would never do something like that. Oh, you would never do something like that? So what happened when you were sitting in traffic this morning? It's effing traffic. Are you kidding me? This is so stupid. My life is ridiculous. Do you know what that is? That's an incantation. We all do them every single day. And you're letting yours be dictated by something you have no control over. And the person who's focused on personal development is choosing what it is that they're paying attention to. So in that reality, who's really the crazy person? You know what I'm saying? And it really is. It's that. And the other funny thing is, a lot of the stuff that you learn at events or conferences, or we learn at Cutco and stuff like that, all of the people that we know and love, our parents, our grandparents, our kids, or whatever, they all do this stuff. It's just that we don't do it deliberately. Like, I'll give you a couple examples. If let's say you have a kid and they're like 6 or 7 years old and they don't get to do what they want, so they sit in the corner and they kind of get depressed or negative or whatever. What do you usually do? What do parents do to try to make them happy and cheerful sometimes, right? They go up and they tickle them. Well, what happens when you tickle them? Well, they start laughing, and then you do it again, and you do it again. And then all of a sudden they're not that sad anymore. Well, what is that? It's the same thing that Tony teaches. That's breaking your pattern. And now when the kid thinks about that thing he was upset about, there's no emotion behind it because he can't remember what he was upset about because you tickled him so much. You know, we do stuff like that. Someone's depressed or they're thinking about something too much or whatever. And then you say, hey, let's go for a walk. Well, when you go for a walk, what happens? You're moving. Your physiology is moving. You're now thinking. You're now focused on something else, and you're now talking to yourself in a different way. That's what Tony teaches, the triad, which is physiology, focus, and the language you're talking to yourself. So we all do this stuff. We all do all the things that all the personal development leaders teach us. We all do them. Your parents, your aunts, your uncles, your negative aunt, your negative uncle. We all do it. It's just personal development is about being deliberate in doing it instead of doing it once in a while when there's an extreme issue, or just when you get, or just kind of randomly. So I just thought that was interesting because I don't know, I think about those random things sometimes.
Well, it's such a good point about the being in traffic and somebody yelling and freaking out and getting into such like angry, anxious state. That's an incantation, and they don't even really realize that they're doing it. And there is literally zero control over the traffic. You're going to be sitting in it. Why not choose to be content and at peace? Throw on an audio or your favorite music or whatever in the car and just enjoy the time, because who knows? Everything happens for a reason. Maybe there was a huge accident that you missed because you're sitting in this traffic that you might have been in. You just never know what the universe is helping you avoid by putting you in some of the situations. So I think it's so funny though. That was a good point.
I have a real quick story. So I had a good friend from high school, and he's a good kid, but he would get into trouble and do stupid stuff or whatever. And one of the reasons I spent a lot of time around him was because sometimes you say like, oh, you can't do that, like whatever it is. And it's like, no, it's not that you can't do it. It's that I think that you shouldn't do it. And sometimes it's like seeing somebody do something, it's like, okay, maybe whatever they're doing isn't really a good idea. But just the fact that I think in my head, like you can't do it at all, them doing it is at least opening your eyes to the fact that like, hey, I could be a little bit more outgoing, or I could do this. But anyway, one of the really good qualities about him was this friend of mine is very outgoing, and he would try to make any situation fun. So one time, I think we might have gone into a Celtics or Red Sox game or something, and I believe it might have been during the day, during the week or something. So for some reason, we were coming out of Boston during rush hour traffic, and we're sitting there, and me and him are just looking at all the people, and everybody's miserable, right? You're just looking and whatever. And he turns the music up really loud, and he starts like dancing around and just having fun or whatever. And he goes, I'm going to get somebody that is just completely miserable to dance with us without rolling down the windows. So we started doing that and acted all crazy or whatever. And this guy, probably in his mid-30s, driving a really nice car, and he just looks miserable. But we keep going back and forth next to him. And finally, he looks over at us, and he just starts laughing at my friend at first. And then we keep going, and he looks over again, he laughs. Then after a while, he literally goes like this. He just throws his hand up in the air, and he just starts dancing with us. And those are just one of those situations where it's like, really, it really is up to you and your perspective. Is you're going to sit here either way. Like, you could jam out on some music, you could listen to some personal development tapes, you could plan stuff in your head, or you could be miserable. And it makes no sense to be miserable because a large percentage of the people that do that, they do that every day. And you know that's what's going to happen. So if you know something's going to happen, you know, might as well plan to make the best of it.
Yeah, I never really have a problem waiting in traffic. Just usually because I know I'm, you know, gonna be there on time anyways. As long as you leave early enough, you're gonna be there on time, no matter how bad traffic is. So, but yeah, so obviously one of the points I wanted to make is that you know, I know Mallory was bringing up this whole idea that, you know, it's great to read books and all that sort of stuff, but they don't really mean anything unless you really do anything about them. And that's one of the cool things about this group, is that we actually all have goals that we set out for ourselves. And in order to accomplish those, we all definitely need to take action. And what's cool about these books is that they actually, they really apply to you no matter what your goal is. And so it doesn't really matter if it's a financial goal, or if it's a family that you want to start, or a career that you want to attain, or you know, just something that you want to get in life or whatever. Like it's really cool that you can just, you know, pick up one of these books. No matter who you are, it can apply to you. So yeah. So so this is actually a pretty short book. It's only, I think, 75 or 70, or actually only 70 pages long, actually. 71 pages long. And so, you know, we could actually probably read this. I don't know, everybody's schedules are kind of different, but I could probably read this in probably about 3 or 4 sittings. So I don't know what you guys want to do in terms of pacing this out, or, you know, kind of, I don't know if you guys want to try and go through it kind of quick, or if you guys want to take some more time with it and really dive in.
I mean, it's up to you. I mean, if it, you know, it seems like it is decently short, so we could try to talk about a majority of it over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Actually, no, let's do this. Let's do this. Why don't we have it finish on the 3 weeks from now, on the whatever that is, June 5th or something. Reason being is Mallory will have a baby somewhere in there, and we're on vacation from the 24th to the 4th. So whatever that, I think that's Mallory's due date is the 30th. Maybe right, maybe wrong, but whatever that Monday is, I guess it's the 29th. I won't be on the call that day, so maybe we 31st. So maybe we you know, try to get a decent way by next week, and then if you guys, if it's possible to still have the call that second week. I know Mal probably won't be there, and I won't be there either, so maybe if that happens, then we'll skip a week and then completely finish it on, I think it's June 5th.
All right. Yeah,
So.
sounds good.
Cool.
Hey, goal update. I've been using that digit savings, and I like added a new goal as like a deadline with a dollar amount. And I just looked at it the other day and realized that there's $400 in there. I was like, oh, I didn't even realize. So I was like, dang. And I just started it like 2 months ago. It was crazy.
That's cool.
So that's an update of a goal that I have been wanting to save.
That's really cool. I mean, that's the biggest thing about when it comes to finances is automating it, because then it goes somewhere and you still have access to it. But again, if you don't even notice that it's gone, and it helps you, it helps you budget better and be able to achieve some of the goals and stuff. Because I use a different app, but I have a million different things that we're saving for. And one of the thoughts that goes through my head is to say, well, what if something changes? Like, what if, Meg doesn't do as many hours with the job she's doing, or blah, 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 blah. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, but you still would have saved all that time. The money's still yours. And if you didn't really even know, if you're not noticing it now because you did it out and said, well, I can save this money right now, then it's better to do that as a habit rather than waiting till you make more, or you feel like you can save more, because that time never comes. So that's really cool now. That's a great update.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, unless you guys have anything else, we can kind of close this out, or whatever you guys want to do.
I don't I don't think I have anything else specifically, but I think the book touches on some ideas we've heard some before, but from a little different perspective. And I think that whole idea of your perception and what you pay attention to, and I also think that, I'm sure he'll talk about with the importance of like who you surround yourself with, because one of the reasons people try to drag you down is because, and they tell you, like Mallory said, be realistic, is actually not because they don't think you'll succeed. It's actually because if you do succeed, then all of a sudden they're a failure in their own mind, rather than just being someone who's being realistic. So that's their story. Well, I'm realistic. I when I was your age, I was thinking I was going to do all this stuff, but it doesn't work. So now I'm doing this. And then someone who resembles who they used to be has the same thoughts. And if they were to succeed, it would actually be a huge hit to, that person's ego, like Dr. Dyer talks about. So
Yeah, it might go against like what they believe is the reality, and it's like, wait, if that goes against that reality because they successfully completed something that I didn't try because I didn't think it was possible, then what else was I wrong about?
And in reverse, that's what Tony's fire walk is all about, is that we're taught from a very young age that if you stick your hand in fire, you walk in fire, or whatever, you'll get burned. And that's partially true. You can't just stand on a fire. But with Tony's program, you can, with the right focus and right pace and right movement, you can walk across 20 to 30 feet of fire, of burning coals, and not get burnt. You say, well, why do you have to do something like that? Like, what's the point? The point is, once something that was so ingrained in you is found to not be true, or at least not true in the way you thought, now all of a sudden you have an opening. So if you want to know what a book, a tape, a group like us, it's not actually that you change your life in a minute. It's that you change your perspective and there's an opening. And if you're willing to take that opening and walk through and make new decisions, you can start out on a different path. That's what it's really all about.
Yeah, definitely.
Live the movie.
Live the movie. All right, guys. So we will have another call like this on next Monday.
Next
next Monday at 6:30 as normal. And we will talk to you guys all then. And until then, live the movie.
All right. Have a good week.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
See you guys.